Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon. After 1923 Season 2, I understand why Spencer Dutton was happier in Africa. Spencer Dutton, Brandon Sklinner, originally wanted to stay in Africa, and 1923 Season 2 has shown exactly why he preferred the safari over America. At the start of 1923, Spencer Dutton was living in Africa and working as a big game hunter for hire. He was relatively happy there, and once he met Alexandra, Julia Schletfer, his life became almost perfect. However, by the end of 1923 Season 1, Spencer was on his way back to America to help the rest of the Dutton family tree fight for the Yellowstone ranch. Spencer had a few reasons to stay in Africa, such as his PTSD from World War I, and the fact that he liked the danger of being a big game hunter, but it was still a bit odd that he preferred a foreign land to his home country. After all, Spencer had almost no friends in Africa aside from his guides. He was suffering from the major trauma of fighting in a war, and he whiled away most of his days by drinking. 1923 Season 2, Episode 4, however, proved that Spencer was more than justified to like his life in Africa. Because of 1923 Season 2, it makes perfect sense that Spencer would prefer Africa to America. In Africa, all of Spencer's worries were right in front of him, and he could deal with most of them with a shotgun. They were also predictable. He knew exactly how a lion would attack him, and he could plan ahead to outsmart it. In America, however, all of Spencer's problems have been blindsiding him. He didn't realize how powerful the mafia was. He didn't realize the cops would double-cross him, and he didn't realize the train would be filled with murderous thieves. From Spencer's perspective, his time in America, at least after World War I, has been nothing but trouble. He's been beaten, threatened, separated from his wife, and he's seen the lowest depths of cruelty humans are capable of. In Africa, Spencer may have had to deal with wild animals and shady businesses, but he at least had some friends he could rely on. The world made sense to Spencer in Africa, and America has just been a web of confusing pain since the moment he touched the soil. I wouldn't want to go back either, especially considering the ugly truths 1923 Season 2 has been exposing about America. It's really no surprise that Spencer has had such a rough time in America so far, given how 1923 has been portraying the country. Since it started, 1923 has been devoted to holding a candle to the ugliest and most brutal parts of American history. 1923 Season 1 featured things like Tina Rainwater's, Amina Neves' abuse at the boarding school and Alice, Joy Osmanski, and Zane's, Brian Girardi, fight against a racist law against intermarriage. 1923 Season 2 has featured everything from xenophobia at Ellis Island, brutal crimes against women, particularly Christy, Kaylin Rice, and Alexandra, and Marshall Kent's, Jamie McShane, violent bigotry. Once the dust has settled between Donald Whitfield, Timothy Dalton, and the Duttons, if Spencer is alive, he'll have a big choice to make of where to spend the rest of his life. The threat to the Duttons will be past, the Yellowstone will be relatively safe, and Spencer could go back to Africa with Alexandra if he wanted to. However, it seems likely that Spencer will choose to stay in Montana if he lives to see the end of 1923 Season 2. Alexandra is pregnant with his child, and he probably wouldn't want to make another perilous 6-month journey with a pregnant woman or a newborn child. Aside from the logistics of moving back to Africa, there's a bigger reason why Spencer may choose to stay in Montana. Spencer has, more or less, fought off his demons with Alexandra's help. He's not running from anything like PTSD anymore, and he's got a reason to live again. Because he's changed so much since the show began, Spencer may be willing to accept the responsibility of running the ranch, and he may choose to build a life and a family with Alexandra there. America may be cruel, but Spencer has never been one to run from a fight, especially after 1923 Season 2. When 1923 Season 2 wrapped, one thing became crystal clear. Spencer Dutton wasn't just escaping to Africa for adventure. He was running toward something his soul craved, and maybe something only the wild could offer. Watching his journey unfold across oceans and continents, through wars, grief, and love, it's no wonder he seemed happier under the burning African sun than among the cold Montana pines. Spencer Dutton wasn't built for ranch gates and family legacy. He's a man haunted by war, burdened by expectations he never chose. In Africa, he found a freedom that didn't require him to carry the Dutton name like a yoke. There, he could breathe without having to live up to John Dutton Sr.'s shadow or navigate the brutal chessboard that is Yellowstone Ranch. In the dust and danger of the African bush, he wasn't just the youngest Dutton son or a broken veteran, he was himself. Africa gave Spencer more than space, it gave him clarity. The continent's unforgiving wild mirrored the untamed parts of him that Montana tried to cage. Whether tracking lions or wrestling with crocodiles, he met challenges head-on, not for anyone's legacy, but because it made him feel alive. The risks he took weren't acts of rebellion, but rituals of rebirth. Each encounter, every brush with death, chipped away at the numbness war had left behind. And then came Alexandra. Their whirlwind romance was as raw and immediate as the land around them. Love, in the African wild, felt honest. It wasn't structured by societal expectations or family obligations. It grew organically, intense, feral, and real. With her, Spencer didn't have to explain the ghosts he carried. She met him not as a broken soldier or a wayward Dutton, but as a man worthy of love in the present, not just pity for his past. Contrast that with what awaited him in America, a land burdened with old grudges, bloody feuds, and a family legacy soaked in sacrifice. The ranch wasn't a home for him. It was a battleground in a war he never asked to fight. Montana offered cold nights, colder relationships, and a sense of duty wrapped in barbed wire. Every Dutton in that place was at war, with the land, with outsiders, with themselves. But Spencer had already fought his war in the trenches of World War I. He had already paid his dues. Africa was his afterlife, and for a while it offered him peace. In Season 2, we watched as that peace unraveled. Circumstances dragged Spencer away from the life he had built with Alex, stormy seas, cruel timing, and the pull of blood. The moment he stepped back into the world of the Duttons, you could see the light in his eyes dim. He was a man returning to a life that had already mourned him, and a family that expected him to fill shoes he never wanted to wear. Montana was colder than ever. Back on American soil, Spencer's edge dulled. He became part of the machinery, the Duttons' ongoing war for survival. The family didn't ask how he had survived war, love, or loss. They asked what he could do next to help them keep the ranch. It was duty over healing, strategy over soul. The Spencer who once chased lions with nothing but a rifle and grit now found himself lost in family drama and blood feuds. There was no room for the man he had become in Africa, only the one his family needed him to be. And Alexandra, she became collateral in the slow unraveling of his freedom. Their love, forged in fire, was now tempered by long distances, misunderstandings, and the harsh reality of legacy. Where once they moved like partners on an equal path, now the currents of Dutton responsibility pulled them in opposite directions. Spencer's heart was always wild. Montana tried to tame it. Season 2 made it painfully clear that this was a world that didn't know what to do with a man like him. The Duttons are survivors, yes, but their survival comes at a cost. Love, peace, happiness. They cling to the ranch as if it's the only thing keeping their souls anchored. But Spencer? He already knew there was life beyond the Yellowstone fence line. He had tasted it. He had lived it. And now he could only remember it. The tragedy of Spencer Dutton is that he tried to bring Africa with him, not just Alexandra, but the man he was when he was with her. The world back home wouldn't allow it. In Montana, Survival means sacrificing parts of yourself until only legacy remains. By the final moments of 1923 Season 2, Spencer looks less like the fearless hunter and more like a caged lion, pacing a life too small for him. The call of Africa is still in his eyes, in the quiet moments when no one's looking. He hasn't forgotten the sunrises over the savannah, or the freedom that came from being a man without a past. He hasn't forgotten who he was.